All right. I'm going to go ahead and call this Assembly Committee on Housing and Homelessness to order. We are scheduled today, Wednesday, October 19th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. here in the Assembly Chambers. Let's go ahead and start with introductions of members on the dais, and then we'll go to members on the phone.
Daniel Bowen.
Christopher Constantine.
Felix Rivera. And then on the phone, we have Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
We have Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
And we have Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Okay, and then do we have any other members on the phone?
Yes, this is Cameron Perez.
Okay, great, thank you, Mr. Perez. And then I want to note for the record that members Allard and Cross are excused, and member Solt as well. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and begin. So first on our agenda, initial audience participation. We didn't have anyone sign up, so we'll go ahead and move on then to our unfinished business. Just a note before we get moving, you will see that there is no discussion of the Navigation Center on the agenda. We're not going to be having that discussion here today. Instead, we have 2 work sessions planned on the Navigation Center. The first one we have planned for tomorrow from 1:20 to 3:20 p.m. in conference room 155. And then the second one we have planned for Friday. And this one's going to be a little bit different. It's actually going to be a site visit at the Tudor and Elmore site from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. So for members of the public interested in that discussion, which I know there are many, those are the 2 opportunities in the near future to have that before our deliberation on the 25th. Moving on. So first item under unfinished business is an update on Assembly approved appropriations. So first item is AR 2022-221S as amended. There were 4 items under that appropriation. First was $500,000 to United Way to rehab 60 units. As I understand it, the United Way representative is running a little bit late, so we'll go ahead and come back to that particular topic in a minute when they arrive. The second topic we have is the Christian Health Associates $350,000 for family emergency shelter. Could we get someone, perhaps maybe the coalition could provide an update?
Hello.
It's not on. There you go.
One day I'll learn it. Sharia Ware, Systems Improvement Administrator for the Anchorage Coalition and Homelessness. The Family Cold Weather Shelter contracts were signed. The program has been underway since October 1. There has been some good utilization by families. So the case management provider, Rural Cap, has just hired on staff. So we're hoping to see more movement as far as the housing pipeline, so say, goes with those families that are been actively being sheltered.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and pause, see if members have any questions. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that. And I might actually not move too far because the next couple of items. So next one is Brother Francis Shelter, $433,000 adult emergency shelter. Those beds have already come online, so we won't go into that. But the next one is the Coalition to End Homelessness, $1.72 million for outreach. Any update on that one?
Yes. So for outreach on this one, we are in the final stages with HD for getting subcontracts approved for the purposes of engaging outreach teams. We have not stopped that work. The RFP went out for additional outreach or finalizing those that would be definitely engaging in this project for that full engagement consistently from those teams. So that went out, we're reaching out to those. We continue to do twice a week outreach pop-ups and have had good client engagement and have also added medics to that. And there have been several that have been seen by the medics and really like that addition. And those pop-ups are noticed by the campers, by those that are unsheltered and by providers. And so it comes out every week and they are sure to do that. Even yesterday they did one.
Great. So I guess the question I have for you is, so the final steps to get the subcontracts approval, is that just internally or is that through the health department?
That is with the health department. And so I know that there were some insurance requirements that we're still looking at, and then some, just document signing that they're going through, but in final stages.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and pause, see if there are any questions on the ACEH outreach. Okay, not seeing any. Thank you so much. Definitely looking forward to that work continuing because we know how important it is. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and move on to the next topic on our agenda, which actually, sorry, that's where I asked you to sit down too early. So this next one, this is probably going to be the last time it's going to be a regular agenda topic. And just for the record, I'm keeping these on until I know that all of the contracts have been signed and all of the money has been moved. So until I know that, then I'm going to keep these on. So this next one, the money has been moved. I'm not worried about it. That's AR 2022-222, $3.4 million with the guest house. So I guess if you wanted to provide any update on the guest house, otherwise I'm just going to remove this as a regular agenda topic.
Wonderful. So the update is that they're working through the wait list to only fill 5 units, so the guest house is still really full. The fact that there's a wait list to work for is wonderful. People in the community seem to know about it and things are going well there.
Great, wonderful. Always exciting to have new housing come online. Any questions from members on the guest house? Yes, Mr. Boland?
Thank you. What has the dialogue been with either of the community councils downtown or Fairview? Have you provided an update to them recently about the guest house?
So I know that we have not been at the Fairview Community Council, but we did go to the Downtown Community Council, and that included the current operator, which is MASH, over at the guest house. And so they will be going there regularly. They are looking into doing an MOU or MOA together, moving forward. But they will be there regularly every month.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I don't see any other questions. Thanks so much. All right. So the next one will not require the coalition, so you're good, Sharia. So the next one is AR 2022-178S as amended. There's a lot of different topics that we could probably talk about within this, and for those who don't know by the title, that is the ARPA 2 funds that we appropriated. For the purposes of this committee, I'm just sticking for now to the $11.87 million with Rasmussen. So I believe we have a representative from Rasmussen, if they can come up and speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are proceeding with looking at 2 properties, 2 hotels to be converted into housing. This would be single residency occupancy, somewhat like boarding house, except for the units that have kitchens. And over time, we will actually be putting kitchens in all of them. The first property is a 93-unit hotel in Spenard. We have a completed purchase and sale agreement. We are in the due diligence period. The bulk of the due diligence has already come in. It doesn't, our period to withdraw for due diligence doesn't expire until mid-November, but most of the info has come in, and so far there are no red flags. There's a little bit of deferred maintenance that we will be setting up some reserve to deal with. And then we also completed a limited appraisal on that property, and the price in the purchase agreement is at the very low end of what the appraiser came in for value. So that's all proceeding well. The second property just came online, and we quickly put in a notice of intent to buy. We have now completed the first PSA draft. The owner has agreed to it verbally, but has not yet signed it. So hopefully that one will be moving quickly. We would start due diligence as soon as the owner signs the PSA with an aim. The first property we'd like to close by the end of November, and the second one would be in January. The other aspect of this work is, if you recall, in that appropriation, the funds were appropriated to the Rasmussen Foundation or its designee. because Rasmussen is actually, we're brokering putting these deals together, but we're not actually going to own them. What has been formed, what I explained at the time, is the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. That has now been formed. It is a legal entity. It has a full functioning board. And they voted actually this morning to accept the grant designation. So we are working with the contractor who, on behalf of the city, who is doing the grants, to actually substitute them in to be the designee to receive the funds. And then they also voted to accept an assignment of the purchase agreement for the first hotel I described to you to be substituted in as a buyer. So things are moving well. If I may, I'd just add a little point about the guest house that Ms. O'Hara covered. It is going well, and we had budgeted in the pro forma. We looked at, there would be a deficit each month, a small deficit as people came online and paid rent. It's turning out pretty much as we predicted. The deficit is about 30 to 50,000 in these initial stages. We did put some reserves aside to cover that. We expect that to go lower as we get our sea legs under us in operation. But we also just received a grant from a private foundation for $300,000 to help with this next year's operations. So we're pretty secure on operations on that facility for a year.
Great. So I have 3 questions, and then I'll go into the queue. So first is, I know you didn't name the first hotel in Spenard. Are you able to do that?
The owner would prefer that until the due diligence period is finished, that it not be publicly disclosed.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
No problem. It's something that I've explained publicly before, that this is private negotiations, and so in private negotiations, this is just something you have to deal with. So then on the second hotel, I know this is very early in the process, but are you able to provide a description, not asking for a location, but a general description of the hotel?
Yeah, 45 units. A handful of them have kitchens. It's a newer hotel in that, at least before we do due diligence, what it appears now is that it is in good shape and good access to transportation routes.
Great. And then my last question is, so am I inferring correctly that the money is still, that 11.87 million is still in the bank of the municipality, and that it'll be transferred over to the designee once that's all sorted out?
Yes, and the municipality reached out very early on after you passed this to make this a reality, transfer the money, but we asked to wait until we could have the trust completely set up and designated.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go into the queue, starting with Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize if I missed this, but I know you don't want to name them. Can you give a general sense of how many units are at the first hotel? And then for both hotels, can you say sort of what's envisioned in terms of, are any of these rooms large enough to be sort of double units? I know it's housing, so you could conceivably have a family living there. But I'm thinking not just the number of units, but sort of the number of people we expect that could utilize these rooms in both hotels. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dunbar, through the chair. The first one is 93 units, and if the residents choose to do so, they could have roommate situations. There are a number of units at the guest house that people have chosen to have roommates or are couples. So, the number of people served will be based on just what we're seeing at the guest house, would probably be between 93 and 130.
Thank you. Any
For the second hotel?
Oh, the second hotel it's the same scenario. It's 45 units. It's smaller, but also at the choice of the residents, it could be roommates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boland?
Are you able to tell us just general area of town that the second hotel is located in?
Yeah, it's also in Spinard.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess that lends to a question, seeing as both of these are potentially in Spinard. What are the discussions like with the community council, neighborhoods, businesses, those kinds of things?
We actually discussed that this morning. We need to get in front of those groups. There have been preliminary discussions a while back when we had looked at one of these properties before. But now that it is much more realistic, we need to engage with those community councils, much like we did with the downtown and the Fairview, where we had a really good, very productive meeting with the residents, the local neighbors, very engaged.
Great, thanks. All right, not seeing any other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so that completes the updates on the appropriation. So as I said earlier, I'm going to go ahead and take out AR 2022-222 from the list, and I will keep the other two on the list as things are continuing to be implemented. And my apologies, I did just realize that Ms. Burke from the United Way is here, so if we could go ahead and get an update on the rehab of the 60 units, that would be wonderful.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Burke with the United Way, and the Landlord Housing Partnership is a new collaboration in the community, bringing agencies together to identify landlords who will rent to tenants. And just a quick FYI on the project, there's now over 680 landlords that we've contacted, and we have 80 landlords active participating with us. So we're pretty pleased with the progress. One of the things landlords said to us was if we had some renovation money, we could bring more units on. And so that's the request that went through. We have the contract. We've been working with the health department. They've been really great in helping us get it set. And in case this hasn't come up with other grantees, we're doing only the first quarter's worth of projection on that project, so not the full 500, but only through 12/31, because that's when the funds expire. And then we'll just stay tuned about what happens with the balance. We think that could be up to 25 landlords that we engage. We have 10 now on something of a wait list for access to these funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for United Way? All right, thanks so much. Okay, I want to note for the record that for the record, that was Michelle Brown that testified on behalf of the Rasmussen Foundation. I want to note for the record that we've been joined in person by Ms. LaFrance. Okay, so next we have update on Centennial Park Campground. So I'll go ahead and turn to the administration. If you could provide an update on what's going on with the abatement that, as I understand, is scheduled for tomorrow. Is that still happening? How many individuals are currently there? I'll turn it over to you.
Through the chair. Right now, our last census was yesterday at Centennial Campground. There is 98 individuals staying at Centennial. We posted the abatement notice on Tuesday, October 4th. It is still our hope that the abatement process will proceed on Thursday, tomorrow, 10/20. But as with most abatements that we've done in the past, we'll be verifying shelter capacity prior to the abatement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so what is the number of people that are at the Sullivan right now?
Through the chair to Mr. Peterson, we are at the 150 capacity right now. We just checked this morning with Brother Francis. They are full, so we will most likely be surging either tonight or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks. So this is later on in the agenda, but is the Alex Hotel going to be open by tomorrow?
Through the chair, we are actively working to turn on the Alex Hotel as soon as possible.
Okay, we'll get into that in more detail when we get there on the agenda. Any other questions from members on Centennial?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for the update. Would you be able to talk a little bit about the demographics of the 98 individuals who are at Centennial Campground? Specifically in regards to what type of sheltering or housing would be best suited to the needs of those individuals? Thank you.
Through the chair to Ms. LaFrance, I can get with some of our community partners that have been on site with the individuals at Centennial Campground to get a better understanding. We have continued to provide outreach and to provide transportation to both the Sullivan and Brother Francis for people seeking shelter at Centennial. But yes, I can get you an expanded demographic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right. Not seeing any other questions, we'll go ahead and move on then to the review of the emergency shelter plan implementation. So I'll go ahead and see if the administration has any general remarks they'd like to make, and then we'll go one by one through each of the facilities on the emergency shelter plan. So I'll turn it over to the administration.
Through the chair, we can go one by one if you'd like, and I can provide an update for you.
Sure. So let's go ahead and start with the Sullivan Arena. So on top of your general update, if you could just address the current capacity at the Sullivan, the referral system with Brother Francis Shelter, and the surge, how are you working with surge capacity there, and then as well any of the safety issues. As you know, I sent an email to the administration, a couple of emails regarding the safety issues and the scope of work. So if you could address those issues on top of your general update, that'd be great.
Through the chair. So as far as Sullivan Arena, we have not surged the 200-person capacity. We've been working hand in hand with Brother Francis Shelter. They've been a great partner with us. We have been doing well with the referral process to backfill at BFS, and we've been providing transportation. I think that the partnership's going really well. We have not surged yet, but we do know that BFS is going to be full tonight. And so surge will most likely happen tonight at Sullivan Arena. If not today, tomorrow, for sure. I'm sorry, was that me? No worries. We have had great efforts at Sullivan Arena. I think things are going really well there. And as far as like the safety concerns that you have brought forward, the graffiti has been taken care of. And I'm working with the administration right now, as you know, to get a scope of work so we can provide additional security, or to look into providing additional security and then clearing up the trees and shrubs for line of sight. And then there was one more on that list that you had requested, trash pickup, and we're working with municipal resources on that as well.
Thanks. So a couple of quick follow-ups before going into the queue. So is it the administration's intention then to bring forward an appropriation regarding the safety issues around Sullivan on its own?
Through the chair, I'd be willing to work with you on that. I don't know we're in the very early stages of this. We haven't even reached out to see if there is preliminary scope of work, but yeah, I'm willing to work with you on that to get that done.
Okay. Great. Yeah. As you know, I have emailed you a couple times around some possible scope of work, including a great letter that was put forward by the Hand Commission that detailed some good possibilities for scope of work. Definitely hoping that we can move forward. It's been a couple of weeks now. So would like to see some movement on those commitments that we've made to make sure that the folks around the Sullivan Arena, the neighborhoods, are safe. Next question I had is around the surge. So I just want to make sure that we are using the surge capacity at the Sullivan Arena properly. So the amendment, although quite technical, stated that surge can only be used if there's 90% utilization at the Sullivan of the 150 beds for 5 days and all other low barrier shelter beds are full. So can you just confirm that that has been met and that you are able to surge tonight?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, is there a threshold, let me ask this question, is there a threshold at BFS that we would be willing to discuss? Because if there's only one bed available every night and it's not full, it seems to me that we should be able to surge past the 150 at Sullivan Arena so that we don't have like 20 or 30 people in a warming area if there's one bed available at BFS, and to delay it by 5 days.
So I'll go ahead and ask the coalition if they can advise on this question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Ms. Alice Hall, Executive Director of the Anchorage Coalition on Homelessness. Ms. Johnson's point is well taken, but it was our understanding it was more a matter of, since Brothers Francis has been using a wait list, as long as there was full utilization of the shelter and someone's ready to go into that bed, that would be full utilization of low barrier shelter. And then, so as she indicated, if someone's in the warming area and we can move that person to Brother Francis, obviously that would be full utilization for Brother Francis. But that just has to be held with the 95% capacity at Sullivan for 5 consecutive days. So I think that flexibility is built in by knowing who's on the wait list, if there's a wait list, and how many people are accessing the warming area. But the fact that the Sullivan is at 150 and Brother Francis just came up to its full capacity, we don't think, as of today, the surge capacity requirement that was put into the Assembly's document. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the administration want to add anything further?
Through the chair, if Brother Francis is full and we have 20 plus people in a warming area, I would ask that the Assembly would take into consideration that we have additional beds ready to turn on, and you are asking us to hold those beds empty for 5 days when BFS is fully utilized.
Thanks. I guess I will have a different interpretation here. I don't think any the Assembly as a whole has asked, nor have any individual Assembly members asked the administration not to use those beds. In fact, we are simply asking if you are following the resolution that was passed and the letter of the resolution that was passed. So is it the administration's interpretation that you intend to follow the letter of the resolution that was passed?
Through the chair, the administration will follow all code. I mean, it's not our intention to not follow code. To say the interpretation is that we don't believe that surge capacity can be turned on because BFS hasn't been full for 5 days. I am telling you that the Sullivan has people in a warming area waiting for a bed, and BFS is full day 1 today, and now you're asking for 4 more days to turn those vacant beds on. Thank you.
Again, I would appreciate it if the administration would not put words in the mouths of members of the Assembly. There's not been a single Assembly member that has asked you to wait for 4 days. We are just asking if the administration is following the letter of what we stated. Now, perhaps we could look back at the letter of what we stated to see if there's enough wiggle room in it. I'll go ahead and go to Mr. Constant.
So, I think that the bigger challenge is the outlets. And I know the statement was made that it's the intent to turn it on as quickly as possible, but we face an abatement of 100 or so individuals, 92, I think was the number, 98, and we have a 90 or so bed facility that is ready to go in, and it seems like that, and those some of them could be dual occupancy, is the resolution to this conundrum. And so, is there any more specific information than yes, we intend to? Is it within a month or 2 weeks, or where are we in the context of that?
Through the chair to Mr. Constant, our priority has been the Alex to turn it on. We are in contract negotiations with the owner right now. The heading contract for operations at the Alex has been fulfilled as far as going through the process. The landlord, we're working with the owner of the Alex Hotel, and we are caught up in some contractual hiccups that we're trying to work through right now. My hope is to turn it on by today.
So before we continue the discussions on the Alex, I'm going to go back to Mr. Boland, who I think had a question on the Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to kind of reiterate what the chair had said earlier regarding those appropriations for safety and security around the Sullivan, especially if we are preparing to enter surge. I think the fact of the matter is that we know that there are things that happen in a large congregate shelter format that need to be mitigated. And Alexis, you had said that the graffiti had been taken care of. And I think probably you're speaking specifically to graffiti on premise at the Sullivan. You may recall from Member Rivera's emails, which I've been CC'd on a couple of those. What we're asking is sort of for a broader effort around the Sullivan in terms of trash can placement and trash removal, graffiti removal, security that would sort of extend to a perimeter beyond the immediate premise. And that's something that the Fairview community is really asking for. And I have to commend Fairview for everything that they've done, the initiative that they've taken upon themselves. We have members of that community who have taken it upon themselves to multiple times remove graffiti and do some of these other things. So if we could really proceed with haste on that, it would make me feel a lot better. I think it would make my part of the community feel a lot better about your ongoing work at the Sullivan. Thank you.
Thanks. So next I had Ms. LaFrance, then Mr. Constant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions, and apologies if I missed this. I thought the Brother Francis shelter was already at capacity. It's not at capacity?
Through the chair to Ms. LaFrance, we call every morning to BFS. Over the last 3 to 4 days, they've had anywhere between 1 to 6 beds open that we have been transporting from the Sullivan Arena over to them.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question has to do with the issues that Mr. Boland and Mr. Constant have raised in their district and concerning the impact to the community. And just also on that, what is the interim plan? I mean, I imagine Mr. Boland and Mr. Constant have been getting direct reports from neighbors. I've heard of a few incidences concerning graffiti and some other security concerns. But until there are additional resources allocated, can personnel be directed to assist in this area, or what can be done, or is there a direct line that neighbors can call to get immediate attention to these issues? Because this is it's such an important aspect of the emergency shelter plan. Thanks.
Through the chair to Ms. LaFrance, I don't have an answer for you right now on that. What I can do is I can get that answer for you and send it over.
Thank you, and I guess I just would encourage there to be, as others have said, an interim plan that can be put into effect immediately to address these issues. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
So following on Mr. Bowen's commentary about the folks at Fairview who've been really incredible in not fighting irrationally these issues, but instead attempting to provide proposed solutions and be part of the solution by taking on work themselves and showing the best of what a community can be. They've been asked to provide to myself and Mr. Boland a proposed slate of potential short, medium, and long-term improvements that could be done to mitigate the damages that have been done as that location has been utilized for so long and so much has occurred. And I anticipate that something will come back before the body before we finalize the budget process. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like at this point. We're still in conversations. I just want to preload that that is an area of concern that we also are doing the work to undo the damages so that other areas of town can rest assured that when the assembly says we're going to make sure that the facilities that are going in at this place aren't going to cause harm, that we demonstrate we mean it.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other discussion on the Sullivan, then we'll go ahead and move on to the Alex. I think the administration already provided some basic information on the Alex. Any other questions folks have? Okay, not seeing any, then we'll go ahead and move on to Brother Francis Shelter. So these beds have been on for quite a bit. Has the administration heard of any issues regarding Brother Francis Shelter?
Through the chair, no issues to report at this time?
Thanks, and I guess I'll turn to the North District's members, see if they have heard any issues. Mr. Constant?
Yes, I am sure that as we conclude this meeting and go to audience participation, we will hear some specific concerns that are from an individual property owner. And so I have heard that there have been some damages that are kind of increasing. Can't directly tie them to the operation of the shelter, but as the population increases, we have to be very cognizant of ensuring that we have management out on the streets as well. And so I don't want to put words into anybody's mouth, but I have heard some rumblings of some increased deleterious activity.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Rowland, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would add that I've heard the same. And I also just think it's difficult, like Mr. Constant pointed out, to tie that directly to the shelter. I think we are also seeing an effect of potentially some folks don't want to go into a congregate shelter model. There are some issues downtown. That's basically what I will leave it at. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just had a question. Do we know, have we done a survey of the people that are Centennial? Are they waiting for the Alex Hotel to get open? Is that why they're still camping there? Because they would prefer not to go to the Sullivan? Do we have any kind of, a tally of people that would like to, that are waiting for the hotel to be available? Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Peterson, I can't give you specific numbers of how many people out of the 98, but I do know that with one-on-one conversations with people there, they either are wanting a hotel room, they want to go to the Sullivan, they're just not ready yet, or they do not want shelter in any capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any other discussion, we'll go ahead and move on to Covenant House. And does the administration have any update on the increase in beds that we provided for Covenant House?
Through the chair, it looks like the contract for Covenant House was executed on 10/12. So they have increased their capacity in the gymnasium for 18 to 24-year-olds by 25 people.
Okay, thank you. Good to hear that. Any questions from members? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go ahead and move on then to Beans Cafe. So this item is still in the Assembly's approved resolution that set forward the emergency shelter plan as one of the parts of the plan. And I believe the funding for this is also still available. And if I'm wrong, I hope the administration will correct me on that. So I guess the question to the administration, the Beans Cafe was planning on providing 40 semi-congregate beds at their new Midtown facility. Do we envision needing to utilize these beds by the end of the year?
Through the chair to Mr. Rivera, I would say any and all beds are welcome. Beans had indicated that they no longer were going to offer that service. So the 306,000 is still allocated, or appropriated, I should say, but the provider did decline to contract.
Yes, thanks. In my conversations with the provider, it appears that there are some hurdles to overcome, and if those hurdles can be overcome, then the provider may be willing to come back to the table. So if I'm hearing the administration correctly, it sounds like there may be a need for some additional beds in the future, and that having these beds would not be a bad idea in case we needed them. Did I interpret that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, I would welcome all beds, and if you'd like, I can reach out to Ms. Sauer with Beans Cafe and have ongoing discussions.
Yes, that would be helpful. My initial conversations with Beans Cafe is that they are willing to have further discussions. Okay, any further discussion on Beans Cafe? Questions from the members? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and move on to the update on...
Sorry, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a general question on the emergency shelter plan. And a question to members of the administration. Do you need any additional resources or help from the Assembly in any way to completely implement the emergency plan?
Through the chair to Ms. LaFrance, I appreciate you asking that question. I was not prepared to answer it, but if you give me a day, I can work with you on getting an answer to that.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Please don't hesitate to let us know if there is something that is a roadblock to implementing the plan. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to prolong this discussion, but I'm just kind of looking at the numbers and I'm wondering about the abatement from Centennial Campground tomorrow, because you said there's 98 individuals there. We don't have the beds from Beans Cafe. Our surge capacity would be an additional 50 individuals at Sullivan. So how are we able to proceed with abatement from the campground? And then I guess a second question is there any planned abatement from anywhere else in town? Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Boland, as you know, we would have to have beds available in order to abate. Our plan is to hopefully have the number of beds needed to abate tomorrow. As far as other abatements around town, I can connect you with the CAP team and with Parks and Rec for anything that they're working on currently.
Okay, okay, we had, just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So I think what you're saying is if the Alex Hotel is turned on tomorrow, 55 units there, 50 search capacity would get us to the 98. Got it, okay. Thank you.
Thanks. So next I will turn to the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness. If they wanted to speak to their experience with the abatement, in particular of outreach, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So I had a chance to talk with our outreach manager, who's been out at Centennial since the abatement was posted, and not knowing the capacity moving in toward the time the abatement is to occur has been extremely disruptive. Whether this will it happen or won't it happen doesn't put clients in a position of making any firm plans, and in fact causes a lot of self-resolution where people just move on and they lose track of them. The reason I wanted to share this is it's not simply a unit or bed calculation. It's the idea of the code provision from our perspective is always to give time to plan so that we can do the outreach, work with clients, and try to come up with plans for each of them that meet their needs. Either to go into shelter, find another resolution, whatever it may be prior to abatement. But now that we're a day away with this many individuals, it has been terribly confusing. We're, frankly at a loss. And so we need to get some real clarity on how this is going to work moving forward, because this is really untenuous and it makes for less than effective outreach encounters. People want to know the answer to the question, which is, are we going to be abated or not? And if we say we don't know, while we work really hard to get engagement, we're already off on the wrong foot when we don't have the information that clients need. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that perspective from the Coalition's outreach team. I can say from my perspective, the abatement process can certainly be cumbersome. Can be hard to track, hard to follow for clients as well as the public. I know members of the public have wanted to follow the abatement process carefully as well. It also can be fairly harmful and traumatizing if we're not very careful in how we handle the abatement process. So I really appreciate that perspective. And hopefully those are all words taken to heart so that when we do handle this and future abatements, that we are very careful in how we handle it. Any other discussion before we move on to the Golden Lion? Yes, Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to have to leave pretty soon. And I know you said we aren't going to talk about the Navigation Center, but I have one question I want to put on the record before I have to leave. And I don't need an answer to the question today. I just want to make sure that the question is out there to the Chief of Staff. On the 29th, we submitted a written request seeking information relating to the contract and the subcontracts. And at the committee meeting on the 7th, we were provided partial information, and then additional requests were made in writing by myself to the presenter, which was Mr. Wilbur, and it's simply to get ourselves a complete list of contractors and subcontractors for the project. And again, I don't need an answer today, but I do need an answer soon as we begin to move through that conversation. And it's been almost a month. And so I don't know what the delay is. The conversation around the table is we didn't provide it to you because it was lengthy and we didn't want to overwhelm you with information. Well, please overwhelm us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on then to the last item under new business, which is an update on turning the former Golden Lion as housing. Members of the public and the body will remember that at our last regular assembly meeting, the assembly passed a provision that took out the former Golden Lion as part of the emergency shelter plan and instead stated our very direct and hopefully not confusing direction that the Golden Lion will be turned on as housing. In response to that, the administration did say that they had some questions that they would be sending on to the assembly if that was our intent. And so we did get those questions last night from the Chief of Staff, so I think that is where we will start with this discussion, which is and thank you for being here, Mr. Trombley, if the Chief of Staff could please go through that email and provide whatever other updates you'd like to on the Golden Lion. I think that's how we will start.
Sure, through the chair. So I did ask Dave Whitfield for planning to be here to talk about, because there were some questions about the use and the function of the building. It all really comes down to use, the defined use under Title 21, and then the subsequent requirements that would be necessary from a zoning standpoint to operate within the confines of the law and code. And so the first step, and again on Monday I believe it was, AHD, planning, and legal, we all got together in a room, had a meeting for an hour, and this is the result of that, meeting these questions and lining up the use classification and determination requests, as well as some other questions. And again, I think one of the biggest questions, and again, I know I've received several questions from members of the body, so instead of responding individually to everybody, I figured it'd just be best to do it in this format here so everybody can hear it at once, is a couple of things. The ordinance that the resolution that the Assembly passed dealt with housing. There are multiple use classifications in Title 21 that deal with housing. In order to understand how the body wants that to function, I am absolutely happy to do the work to get you to that answer, but I need to know from the body how you want it to function. And so that's the number one thing. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Whitfield, and he can help lay out that process for doing a use determination, and if needed, use classification, and then a determination request as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Trombley. Dave Whitfield, Planning Department, to the Assembly. The use classification process is a process that is a benefit to any applicant. It provides the applicant with assurances that the project going forward is in fact permitted by Anchorage Municipal Code Title 21, and sets out the entitlement process for that permitting of that project. In order for the golden line to be turned on, so to speak, the municipality would have to go through what we call a change of use permit process. The change of use permit process is a permit that is reviewed for conformance with Title 23 and Title 21. Having the use determination in advance of that change of use process provides those assurances that you will in fact be permitted through Title 21. As Mr. Trombley pointed out, there are a number of uses within the housing or residential category of Title 21, and because we don't know how operationally this particular use is to be done, we would recommend a formal use classification request.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on to that is the resolution you passed when it said housing. What I don't want to do is to presume what the Assembly wants. It would be helpful to know, again, I'll say it again, is how do you want it to function? And then I know Ms. Zolotel, in her capacity as an Assembly member, did ask me the question, or did make the statement, hey, I will just submit that form. I'm not a lawyer, maybe this would be a question for law, but from my understanding, one person does not speak for the entire body. So I don't know the process. I don't want to take just one Assembly member's direction and say, we're going to go down that route. Because if another Assembly member comes forward and says, well, hold on a second, I don't like the way the guest house works. I want it to operate like Adam's Hostel. And then another person comes forward and says, well, I don't like Adam's Hostel. I want it to operate like Dave's Hotel. I don't want to get into that. I would like something from the body that helps me understand as the body wants it to function. Because again, the resolution you passed simply stated housing. I don't want to presume what the body wants.
Thanks. So I'm going to go ahead and go first, and then I have some other folks in the queue. So I appreciate you're not understanding what the body may want on this, or understanding that we are 12 individuals that are fairly independent. I think that sort of leads to the conclusion, which I think several of my colleagues have already made, that why, rather than have 12 independent individuals do this work, could not the administration do this work on its own and present something to the assembly if that is needed?
Sure, through the chair. Again, when we look at Title 21 and we look at the residential uses, I believe there's 17 different classifications that could fall under residential use. Now, obviously, some of those can go away. Habit of care from 3 to 6, habit of care 6 to 12. We know that there's going to be more than 12 people living in there, right? But that does cut down that list to multiple options. There's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done in order to get this operational, functional within the law. And if that leaves us with 7 categories, that's a lot of work to move forward with 7 different categories to say, well, here's the 7 options, which one do you want? I think it would be easier from the administration standpoint to know what does the body want, and then once you identify, we want it to operate as a rooming house or a hotel motel, that's already its use classification, or something else, then we can say, okay, now we're willing to do the work to move it forward in that direction. And it's a tremendous amount of work, and Mr. Whitfield wants to, the timeline associated with the use determinations and classifications is not simple. There's workload that they have to do currently. This would be added into the workload, and it would extend the time to do multiple. I don't know how long does the use classification take, Mr. Whitfield. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to ask him that. Is it okay if I ask him that?
I am fine with that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Trombley. A typical use determination or use classification, we estimate about 10 business days for it.
Thanks. So I guess, 10 business days. I guess if I were to sort of go back by when the Assembly approved the resolution, I'm wondering if this issue could have been resolved by now. But I'll go ahead and go through the queue rather than me just opining. So I have 4 folks in the queue. I'm going to start with Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what is the current use classification for the guest house?
To the chair, Mr. Dunbar, I believe the current use classification for guest house is rooming house.
Okay. So that is my preference. If you ask, what do I want this to be? I want it to do what the guest house is doing. And so I guess I don't know if I can be clearer than that, but and I know that the guest house is downtown, so it might have a slightly different Title 21 requirements. And I'll just say, if you guys need a variance, if you anticipate a variance on parking, for example, I certainly would be very supportive of doing that kind of variance, so that it could operate as a guest house outside of downtown. I'll say to my colleagues, I'm looking at the attendant, the actual members on this body, the Housing and Homelessness Committee, and it used to be a committee of the whole, and so we all could introduce a resolution and vote. And committee resolutions have been used in the past. If you remember, it was me and Assemblymember Steele, I believe, that put forward the utility committee resolution that eventually, sort of like a snowball rolling downhill, went to the sale of MLP, years later. But that's sort of where it first started. We asked the administration to investigate selling MLP. And so I guess I would suggest to my colleagues that are on this body that that perhaps we could pass you could pass a resolution today from Housing and Homelessness Committee that would basically say, we want it to be this. And my suggestion, although I'm not a voting member, would be basically make it like a guest house in terms of use classification. The problem I do see, looking at the members you might not be able to get a quorum, but I think that's worth asking the clerk if you decide to go that direction. But that would give you a few more, that would speed things up by 5-6 days, before having to do a resolution at the full assembly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I will also ask if other members are on the line to please mute yourselves. On that note, and I guess I'm just going to ask a fairly direct question. So, would the administration accept a resolution from this committee as proper direction regarding the usage of the Golden Line?
I think it would be a good first step, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if a committee resolution speaks to the body as a whole. I don't know. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything in violation of the law.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I just want to thank Mr. Conley, who has been very communicative and engaging with us, and I do appreciate that. That said, I am just really confused by and not used to the posture of the two branches of government, the administration and us, and how the dynamic is working. Essentially, usually the Assembly sets policy directives through budget actions or other actions, and then the administration implements. And the administration also has operations ideas and comes to us, and we say, yeah, that's our budget goals, our policy goals. In this situation,
Sorry, Ms. Quinn Davidson, you're coming in and out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Ms. Quinn Davidson, we can't hear you again.
Okay, sorry. I'll get off. Thank you.
Thanks. And I don't know if maybe you want to email me, and then I'm happy to read whatever comments you have into the record, or if you want to just try again later, I can put you back in the queue. Next, I'll go to Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Member Dunbar asked one of my questions about the use designation of the guest house. Do we know the use of the Complex Care Center, formerly Sockeye Inn, what use that's classified as?
Through the chair, Mr. Boland, no, I do not. I have to do some research on that.
Okay, I may be interested in knowing that. I think one question I'd like to answer more than that is there a use that falls under the category of housing that presents the lowest barrier to conversion of the Golden Line to housing? I guess the lowest Title 21 barriers, and what would that be?
Through the chair, Mr. Boland, I would say a rooming house would probably be the lowest barrier. I believe that it's permitted in that district. There may be an entitlement, but it would be a low barrier entitlement like an administrative site plan review. I'd have to check the code, but I would say that rooming house would likely be the lowest of the barriers.
Okay, great. And then I'm wondering, is it okay if I do a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much I should go into this, but I guess parking has been raised as a potential Title 21 barrier to affordable housing in this instance. Does a rooming house use require more or less parking under Title 21 than the Golden Line's current use?
Through the chair, Mr. Boland, less.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. And I just wonder if we could maybe get any, Mr. Chair, instruction on whether or not it would be possible to express the will of this committee on recommending that we pursue the use of a rooming house for the full client.
Thanks. So responding to that, there are 8 committee members on this committee. A quorum of 8 committee members is 5, although there are I think there's 7 of us here. Unfortunately, there are only 4 committee members. So currently, unless a committee member is able to join on the phone, we do not have a quorum. And I'm just looking on. Yeah, there are 8 committee members listed, at least on my printed version of the agenda today. So hopefully we can vote today, but that depends on if one more member is able to join us.
Thank you.
Okay, so next I have Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Mr. Trombley and Mr. Whitfield for being here today. I appreciate, as Ms. Quinn Davidson noted, your engagement with us on this issue. Though I confess I am a little bit puzzled about the conversation. Nonetheless, I'm glad we're having it. My first question is, what was the classification of the Spinard Hotel conversion that is in the undisclosed location? Do you know that offhand?
We don't know. Sure.
Okay, thanks. And I understand that there are folks, Mr. Chair, from Rasmussen online who were engaged with that project who would be able to respond. May I ask? I think Ms. Brown or Mr. Dole is on.
Sure, go ahead.
To Ms. Brown or Mr. Dole, would you be able to identify the classification of the hotel in Spinard, the recent conversion in an undisclosed location?
Thank you. Through the chair, it's Michelle Brown from Rasmussen Foundation. All 3, the former Sockeye, the guest house, and the new hotel that's being acquired have all received use classifications as rooming house. And then Mr. Dole, of course, is quite experienced in that area. So if you'd like more detail, I would defer to him.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just would add that I'm in support of whatever would give direction to the administration to clarify the Assembly's intent. And I would just ask Mr. Trombley if the administration would be willing to act on that direction from the Assembly.
Yeah, through the chair, Mrs. France, I'm happy to do the work to see what it would take to do a rooming house. And Mr. Chairman, can I address Ms. Davidson and Mrs. France in regards to their comments about confusion about why I'm going this direction is because the argument's been made, and I think probably validly so, that there's been a lack of communication between the 2 branches of government. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to foster better communication so that it's on the record that there's an agreement in what you want and what we're willing to do. What I did not want to happen was to presume what you wanted and to go down the habit of care route, for example, and then come back to you, and then you guys would. I'm not saying you would do this, but I did want it to come back and say that's not at all what we wanted. We wanted rooming house. But if I don't have that conversation with you, like this in a good format, then I don't know what you want. And so I'm just trying to foster better communication as to why I'm doing it this way. It's really no more complicated than that.
And just a quick response, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Trombley, for your efforts to foster the better and improved communication. I guess, and I know I can't speak for this body, but if the administration were to come forward in some way and say, hey, we're using this as housing, this is part of our community's plan, I suspect many Assembly members would be supportive of that effort to use the Golden Lion as housing in however capacity it best fits to meet the needs of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before I go on in the queue, I would just like to ask the clerk. So it's been noted to me that there's a slight difference between the printed versions of our agenda in terms of the membership and the online version of the membership. So I'm not going to ask you for an immediate response to that, but if you can just dig into that, and if I could get your counsel on why that might be, that would be good. Thank you. So next I have Mr. Presidia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Trombley, for your questions. I guess I have two comments. One is that I appreciate the effort to improve communication. I think we all know that that's something that needs to be worked on, and I appreciate the interest in knowing what different Assembly members think. I think that the key challenge I have here is that we are continuing to perpetuate a role that the Assembly, the role of the Assembly is not correct here. The role of the Assembly here is to submit a resolution saying we want to use it for housing. And certainly we have a conversation about what we mean by housing, but the next step is for the administration to come forward and say, here's, based on our experience, what we think you should use it as. It's sort of like if the municipal attorney came to us and said, what legal argument do you think that we should use in this case? Well, we're not lawyers. We're not experts in this field. You are. So I think just in the future, coming to us with a proposal of, we see that you wanted this, here's what we think is the best land use for this, based on that. But I do appreciate the challenge with communication. I just don't want to continue to perpetuate this idea that, we are in the process of deciding how things are implemented. I think that is your role, that's the administration's role. And you bring a lot of expertise in that area. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward, that we don't spend, like we have been, 30 minutes, talking through something that I think is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you guys would have looked into the three buildings that Mrs. Brown would have talked about, it's pretty obvious, I think, that we're looking at the land use being the same. So, but I do appreciate the conversation. I think sometimes it takes longer to get us back on track. And sometimes more words, but I think it's pretty clear that we want to use it for housing, we want to use it for similar type of housing as the other buildings, and that we would like to move forward on that as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thanks. So I am next in the queue. So two things. One is I did get some clarification. The online list of the committee members is the same as the paper version of the committee members. So we're looking at 8 committee members. I think the confusion is if you don't count the chair and the vice chair, then you get to a lesser number. But if you do count the chair and the vice chair, we're at 8 committee members. Okay, then next I did put the invitation.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Just for clarification, if you don't mind, Mr. Whitfield just checked. The Sockeye Inn is transitional living facility, not rooming house.
Thanks. I guess I will invite Mr. Dole, maybe, if you want to respond to that.
I stand corrected on this possible. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Dole.
Hi, this is Bob Dole. I stand corrected. I did not do that one directly. It was relayed to me secondhand. I defer to the folks there.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then, as I was stating earlier, I did put out an invitation to Ms. Quinn Davidson since she's having some cell service issues, if she wanted to email or text me a comment that I could read into the record. So I have her comment that she would like read into the record. So as I am speaking, please imagine Ms. Quinn Davidson's voice. Quote, my request is that in the absence of leadership by the mayor on the general direction of how to solve homelessness, I would hope that at the very least the administration could take some leadership on implementing solutions the Assembly has identified, such as using the former Golden Lion. It appears through this series of questions today that the administration is only interested in taking assignments from us, which is not how our system of government is supposed to work. My hope would be that the administration could use its staffing and judgment to bring forward a solution and steps to implement the Golden Line as housing, rather than just raise questions to the Assembly. End quote. Okay, I'll go ahead and then again ask if any other members have questions on the Golden Line before we move on. Okay, then before we move on, I will just confirm. So right now I have present myself, Mr. Perez-Verdia, and Mr. Voland and Ms. Quinn Davidson. I do have Mr. Allard, Miss Allard, Mr. Cross, and Mr. Solt are excused. Mr. Constant, were you able to join us via the phone? Okay, so it appears that we still do not have a quorum of this committee, although I think the administration has heard every member here state that they're okay with the usage of the former Golden Line as a rooming house. I guess I will go ahead, unless there is any objection from the members, since the administration does want some type of formal or informal weighing in from the body. I will go ahead and just pose the question to the members present, whether you are committee members or non-committee members, and that question being, are you okay with the former Golden Line being used as a rooming house? That be the determination, use determination for the former Golden Line. I guess that's a better way to phrase it. So I will go ahead and ask that question informally, understanding that we don't have a quorum. And then I will also ask, as I understand it, there is going to be a resolution to formalize this intent at the meeting on the 25th. At least that's, we're hoping to hurriedly bring that forward, since we did just get the email yesterday from the administration, so that this process doesn't delay. Mr. Presbyria, did you have a question on the question I am posing?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, a little bit of a process, but I still think we're backwards here, right? So there are experts. Some are in the audience. Some are have come up and spoke today. The commission, or the name just lost me. Attendant, Homelessness. What is the name?
The coalition.
The coalition and homelessness. Certainly United Way. Beans Cafe, Catholic Social Services, Brother Francis Shelter, all of these people are the people the administration should be talking to about what the right use for this facility should be. They should be bringing their expertise in terms of what that means, what the different options are, talking to the experts who will be running these facilities and working with the people that are there, and coming to us with a proposal about what it should be. Not us telling them what we think it should be classified as. I have no interest in doing that. I am not prepared to do that. I don't think that's our job. So I just would ask, I don't think that's a very difficult assignment. I think it's a phone call with a few organizations who've been doing this for decades, and sitting down for a few minutes and saying, here's what we think it should be designated as, and then coming back to us, and we're probably going to say yes, because we trust these folks, right? We trust these folks to be doing it the right way. So I'm certainly okay if you want to put a resolution forward, but it just seems backwards to me for us to be giving direction to the administration on how to classify a building. It seems like that should be coming the other direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess my response to that is agreement. I do agree that this is backwards, as you say it, but the administration has made their stance fairly clear, right? They want to hear from us before they move forward. So we're sort of a little bit of a catch-22 here. Do we put forward our voice or not? And if we don't, will the administration actually move forward with using the Golden Line as housing? Or do we go ahead and just put ourselves in an awkward role of taking the action even though we shouldn't be required to take the action? So, it's one of those odd, I have found myself in this odd position a lot recently where I have found myself filling a void. And, the question is, if we don't act, then what would happen, right? If I hadn't acted, then would we have an emergency shelter plan? If we don't act, then will the golden land be used as housing? And it's unfortunate, but that is just what happens when you have an administration that isn't willing to do these things on their own.
Mr. Chair, could we just then take a few minutes and have some of the folks in the audience who are experts in this field just come up and tell us what they think the use of this facility should be, and then that would at least give us some information to inform the decision.
Sure, I would be fine with that. Do you have particular members of the public you'd like to bring up?
Sure. I think the coalition is represented here, and United Way is represented here, and so I'd love to have them come up and just briefly describe how they see the use of this facility, and hopefully that will fall into one of the categories that's there. So, would love members of. So it looks like we have an expert walking down the aisle right now, so we'd love to hear your thoughts about what the use you think should be for the Golden Line.
Good afternoon, Nancy Burke with United Way, and expert might not be the right word. However, I did work in the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority for 10 years in the pre-development program, and have worked with a large number of projects in this community and others. And this isn't really rocket science. There's only 2 designations that probably would work. Rooming house is one, and the one that's been used most recently. Or if you put in kitchenettes, you can make it multifamily, and then it's by right housing. Those are really the 2.
And do we intend to have kitchens in this facility?
I mean, I think that would depend on your ultimate use of the building, how you want it to be. If it's housing and you want to make it housing, we need more housing. That would certainly increase the stock.
Thank you.
To be aware, the Anchorage Coalition and Homelessness Systems Improvement Administrator. So our recommendation even came from the Emergency Shelter Task Force, which is to utilize that building just like we did the guest house, too many G's. And so that would be with leases to leverage the rental assistance that we have available, and then also to give people that permanent rental history and that permanent home. So one of the things that Nancy was talking about when it comes to rental units, you don't necessarily need kitchens. They can be SROs like they are at the guest house. You can still utilize vouchers in that location. There are a lot of things that can be done, and then you can still later develop those, kind of like I think Michelle Brown from Rasmussen was talking about with their hotel conversions, is later on look at adding kitchens so that increases the value of the unit, allows people to cook in their units and some other things. So there's long-term visions and short-term, but if we're looking at short-term, housing truly, can happen, and it can happen and access vouchers at that location.
And what was the second designation, Ms. Burke? The first one was guest house. What was the
multifamily?
Multifamily. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Roger Briley, and I'm a local property owner, property manager. I manage over 1,000 units in Anchorage. I've got about 150 units that are in Fairview. I've got 35 units right now that are open and waiting for tenants to move into. Obviously, I have a qualification process. I get calls every single day, probably 5 to 10 calls a day for people asking about housing. I assume you guys have friends and family that all live near me or around me, and you would want me as a property manager to make sure that I'm screening these tenants, I'm putting good neighbors in the buildings. The problem that we have is that we are not screening these people. Why are we not putting rules in to have them stay in our hotels, to have them stay in our places? We talk about doing a remodel on this Golden Lion. It would cost more to put kitchens in than probably what it's worth. I mean, between the plumbing and the heating and all these costs, I mean, there's so many other buildings out there that we could do things with. I met with Lisa Sauter from Beans Cafe. The reason that she's pulling that property off is she's turning it into workforce housing, which I think is what we need. I would love to be able to see these people have jobs, get entered into the community, and then provide them housing. The stipulation would be is you have to work in order to live in the housing. And I could personally probably pull up another 300 or 400 units with some of my longtime Alaskan owners, we all want to look to solve this problem. It's just, if we're not putting these people and giving them certain guidelines and certain things they need to follow, because trust me, they want to have help too. Imagine if they could go to work every day, create income, make themselves feel like they're providing something and not just given housing. Because I get calls. I got $3 million last year in rent relief. I can tell you that probably 50 of those individuals still are not working. And they were working before we gave them rent relief. So there's just a lot of things that we need to look at. And why are you guys not calling me? Like, I understand construction very well. I have 1,000 units. Think about it. I have more units than you guys have. And my next biggest thing is whenever we build these facilities or put these facilities, and I can see why the mayor's office is being careful, because you got people like me.
Go ahead and wrap up, sir.
Okay, you got people like me going, why are you allowing the city to make this change to a property when I, as an everyday citizen that owns a building, can't even do the same thing? You know, so we really we need to all work together. And I've begged, I've pleaded, I've come to these meetings, I've reached out, I've tried to do this stuff, set boundaries, set rules. If we set rules for these people for the homeless people, hey, you got to be in the hotel at this time, you got to keep your room clean, you got to do certain things, we'd have a lot more, because the damage is yet to come. The damage to these facilities is going to be immense without oversight. And my next biggest thing too is the parking.
Actually, sir, thank you. So we're going to hear from you, and then that's it. Thank you. We have final audience participation. We're just going to hear from this one individual, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. My name is Ron Martins, and I work at Rural Cap. I just wanted to comment that Rural Cap has converted to three clear hotels within Anchorage over the last 10 years for just this type of housing. I won't go into details, but we are a resource that I'm more than ready and willing to talk about what the challenges are. There's also
what is the designation that you have used?
The multifamily.
Multifamily.
Yeah,
that's the key for this conversation right now. We're just trying to get some advice on that.
Yes, and one of the keys, especially regarding the kitchen, we have a spectrum of units. Some of our properties have kitchenettes, some don't. We can make it work, and any provider can work creatively to make that golden line work. And if any of the assembly is interested, that's all I need to do is provide our site's 24-hour notice. We can do a tour. We can tour all of our facilities so you can see what the different options would look like, which would be very similar to the golden line.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So after getting that advice from professional experts, do you have any change that you'd like to make to the informal vote that I'm requesting?
Nope.
Okay. So then just to the informal vote today, which will hopefully at least provide some of what the administration needs with the formal vote coming on October 25th, is that our preference is that the former golden line be used as the use determination of the former golden line be a rooming house. I think that is the informal question that we had before us today, with the formal vote coming on the 25th. So let's go ahead and, of the members here, so it doesn't matter if they're committee members or not, let's go ahead and take a vote. So I'll turn it to you, Mr. Turner.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Ms. LaFrance?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
And Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Yes.
I'm also here, Travis.
And Mr. Dunbar?
Yes.
That vote passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you for that. informal vote, members, so hopefully that message is communicated clearly to the administration that we just took a 7-0 vote, an informal one, to use the former Golden Lion as a rooming house, that is its use determination. We will have a formal vote on that on the 25th. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and move us on to committee legislative and budget priorities. I don't have any. Okay, so then moving on to final audience participation. Ms. LaFrance, did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just that for legislative priorities, I was wondering if at some point the committee could discuss making a request to the state of Alaska, as the administration did last year, to support efforts here in Anchorage to address homelessness.
Thank you. That's certainly something that... Are you talking about in the legislative program?
Yes,
okay.
And I know that the body will be talking soon, hopefully with the administration, about the forthcoming legislative program.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right, not seeing anything else, then we'll go ahead and move on to final audience participation. So folks will have 3 minutes. If you could state your name at the beginning, that would be great. Welcome.
Thank you. Ronald Leva. I consider myself an expert in homelessness and also in real estate. And by not letting me testify as an expert in real estate, the Golden Lion, if you put that rooming house there, the adjacent property owner, a senior citizen in Geneva Woods, who has the only vacant lot, put up 28 no trespassing signs, and they were violated. She will die of stress, and you killed her with this vote. Now, I'm here today to talk about my exit from being adjacent to a homeless facility. The camps that come in the overflow due to those camps and crime, I'm leaving. The business is moving, and it's more than economic damage and spiritual damage, it's health damage. And the article I gave you was about guns, but the businessmen who are being stressed from the overflow of crime from the homeless camps. 2 of them had heart attacks already, but they packed guns. And what you're going to end up with is some violence. I'm leaving. The point here is Nancy Burke, thank her. She did visit my facility, and recently, in 31 days, I had 11 break-ins. The total losses are getting close to $60,000, which I'll never recover. And the big one was recently a 150 kW generator worth $30,000 locked up. They broke in and cut every wire. And if you look at the pictures, these camps are between the jail and the Lucky Wishbone. And so I'm like blood in the water with my entire facility, and I can't keep them out. The wire went right up to the camps. They have 2 flags there. I had my American flag stolen downtown. The guest house was a mistake. The point is, the cop, personal friend, couldn't go up there and follow the wire because there's no punishment. And Fred the bail bondsman, he went out of business. This is catch and release. And so there's no win. So the last 25 seconds, I need funds to vacate. You shorted me $250,000 on the purchase. I would like that $250,000, which I believe is owed to me because my land was vetted, should have been bought by the city, wasn't. Just give me the difference and I'll move on. Unfortunately, businessmen not only are arming themselves, they're getting ready for a class action suit against the city. Could I get my money in the budget, if not from the homeless committee? Any questions?
Your time is up, and I do not see any questions for you.
You're in big trouble. It's not always going to be like this. With your decisions, it's bound to get worse.
Thank you, Mr. Oliva. Would any other members of the public like to participate? All right, not seeing anyone else. We're going to go ahead and move on to committee discussion. Any final discussion from members? I guess I will say one thing. I am hopeful that today's meeting is our last one, where with the expanded time frame from 11 to 1 o'clock, I'm hopeful that we can go back to 11 to 12:30. All right, not seeing any other committee discussion, then I will go ahead and adjourn us. We are adjourned. Thank you.